This is the iPhone 16 Pro Max, and it's the latest and greatest iPhone that you can buy right now, today. However, should you be spending your money on a device that hasn't really changed that much in the last 3 years? Well, I've been using it for the last month. Apple Intelligence, the new camera control buttons, all the other software features, and the new upgrades. And I'm here to let you know my thoughts before you click buy on this product. This review is going to be broken down into 4 sections: the design, the cameras, Apple Intelligence, and any other upgrades. First up, we have the design. Now, as you'll know, looking at the phone, there's not actually that many visual changes with the actual design. If you look at the iPhone 14, this, the iPhone 16 Pro Max, you're going to notice 2 or 3 things, and that's it about the design. Still got the same size dynamic island. You've still got a massive camera bump. The only differences you'll see are the size of the bezels, and also the design on the iPhone 16 Pro Max is not stainless steel anymore, it's titanium, so you'll see less fingerprinting on the sides, which for me is a great win if you don't use your phone with a case. Not only does the titanium design have less fingerprints, but it also weighs a lot lighter. If you compare the 14 Pro Max, which was the first iteration of the iPhone with the dynamic island, it weighed 240 grams, whereas you consider now the 16 Pro Max is 227 grams. And that's pretty incredible when you factor in the size, because the 14 Pro Max is 6.7 inches, whereas the 16 Pro Max is 6.9 inches. You get a bigger phone, but it's lighter than 2 years ago. And in day-to-day usage, you notice that. 100%. For me, one of the best things about this phone are the bezels. 1.15 millimeters to be exact is their sizing. This just makes the phone feel so much bigger and the screen feels so much larger than it actually is. I know you've got a 6.9 inch display, so it's almost getting tablet-sized devices, which is crazy. If you would have said 10 years ago, we have a phone that's 6.9 inches, that's just mental. And it is a gorgeous display. I think this is definitely a better display than the 14 Pro that I had, mainly because it's bigger, and also the bezels just make all the difference in the world. But what you'll also find is sometimes you'll accidentally press the edge of the display when you're holding the phone, because the bezels are that small that it might think that you might be touching the screen when in fact you're just holding it in your hand. And one of the main reasons why I bought this phone, besides my 14 Pro's battery being absolutely woeful and they wouldn't replace it, is the camera button. Now, this has caused a lot of conversation. It's very difficult to get that phone out of that MagSafe case, that's for sure. This is the camera button on the 16 Pro Max. And as you'll see, it's a pretty small addition to the actual phone. It looks like the power button, but it's just been sort of indented and it's more touch sensitive. And I don't know, I'm still trying to work out if I love it. The one thing that's holding me back is that it can be a little bit like finicky and you have to play around with it and you have to know what you're doing. When I first tried it in the Apple store in New York, I couldn't get to grips with it and I found it pretty difficult to get used to. It just kind of felt a little bit alien, and that's going from someone who uses cameras all the time. My job is to film and use my camera for Getty. I'm used to using mirrorless cameras every day. The one thing you have to get used to is that you have to like half press twice to then access the mini menu that's in there. And inside that menu, you can change a few features. One of them is that you can change the exposure. You can change the depth, which is basically the aperture of the camera and which lens you're using. And you can change the zoom, change what camera you're using. Then you have photographic styles and tone. In the photographic styles, I haven't played around too much, but the gold style seems to work really nicely, especially if you're in like a warm environment. I've actually tried to force myself to use this camera button more than just using it on the lock screen. But taking off the camera shortcut on the lock screen has really helped me get into the rhythm of pressing the camera control button every time I want to open the camera. I find this works quite well. And now when I go to take a picture, I know to press the button and I know that I can play around with it. Normally what I'm using it for is literally like the action button, ironically. I can press it, it will open the camera, and if I want to make some adjustments, I'm still trying to get used to using the actual button. But over time, I think this is going to change. And obviously it's here to stay. It's on the Pros, it's on the standards. It's going to be here for a long time unless they suddenly scrap it, which I doubt. So overall, I will like it. Right now, needs a bit of refinement, but I think over time, the camera control button will definitely come good. And talking about the camera control button, that leads us nicely on to the cameras. For me, I think there are some really big upgrades on the cameras this year, mainly the 48 megapixel ultra wide in RAW Max and the 4K 120 slow motion recording. These two things I think are going to make a big difference. And having used this for about a month now, I've had a variety of use cases for it, particularly the 4K 120. That has been really, really nice. Here's a couple of like test stupid shots that I did. I was at Portman Road for a dinner a few weeks ago. I did like a slow motion outside the stadium. One thing I couldn't see in the 4K 120 is the flares from the lights. Normally you have like some sort of flaring. On the 4K 100 clip, I can't see any sort of flaring or vignetting, that reflection of lights you normally get with iPhones at night. I couldn't see any of that on this clip. It is still there on the main lens. I've seen it with normal videos at night. Also went out for some dinner with some friends. This is my friend Seb, who races for Red Bull, throwing a dart in slow motion. It's nice to have that option now on an iPhone, particularly in 4K. I know the old settings are in 1080, and just having 4 times the resolution really, really helps. Again, this just adds another really impressive camera feature to a phone. We've got to remember, this is a phone. This is not designed to be a camera, but these features are all top end. My camera that I'm filming on right now does not do 4K 120. It doesn't do it. It maxes out at 4K 50. And this camera is an absolutely incredible camera. It's not really a video camera, but it can't do that. And this iPhone 16 Pro Max can. So keep that in mind. The 48 megapixel ultra wide is really good. I really like it. It is definitely crisper and sharper. You can definitely tell. And obviously with the main camera, it's still 24 megapixel standard, but I saw a big jump in performance from my standard 14 Pro main camera, not on RAW, just on the standard setting, versus my 16 Pro Max on the normal setting. I know it's pixel binning and it's using a lot of processing to put together a 24 megapixel image, but the pictures look sharp, they look crisp, there's a lot of detail, they look good. iPhones have this weird way of processing some photos, like they'll always try and lift the shadows, particularly some skin tones look a bit lighter, and they'll try and bring the highlights down. It's kind of a little bit too HDR-y for me. I know some people like that. I'm not a big lover of it. It's not really how professional cameras look. But again, this is an iPhone, not a mirrorless camera. Got to keep that in mind. And the last thing I want to mention about the cameras is this audio mix feature. Now, coming from someone who is kind of a little bit obsessed with making music at the minute, and I love making sure my audio is crisp and clean, particularly on these YouTube videos. It's like the most important thing ever when I do a video is the audio. You can have amazing video, but if you have crap audio, no one's gonna watch, no one's gonna listen. So you've got to make sure your audio is bang on.
So we're here at the best garage in the country. We have loud noises behind us, compressor over there, cars running outside. So on the screen now, you can see me cycling through different modes to see what you can hear. I've no idea whether it sounds good. This is what different modes sound like. Hopefully you can hear me.
Now we've covered the design and the cameras, I would like to talk about Apple Intelligence. Now for me, this is what the phone was designed for. This is what the phone's marketing strategy has been all around. It's been for the last 3 months. It's now December, the phone came out in late September. Great time of year. It's been almost 3 months, and now today we've just got Apple Intelligence in the UK. I've been using it on the US English version. Now it's out in English, localized to Australia, Canada, the UK, and a few other places. This is what this phone is built for. This is what the whole interest of this phone is Apple Intelligence. I've been using it, it's interesting. I'm not sure if it's going to change people's lives as much as Apple say it's going to. But again, we're at early stages of Apple Intelligence, and Siri is smarter for sure. Like for example, you can ask what the weather's doing in London and you'll say, oh sorry, I meant Madrid, or no, I mean next Tuesday in New York, and it will just understand what you're saying, have more context. The writing tools also are impressive. They don't always work, but they are impressive. You can rewrite emails, texts, even in your notes. You can do any way you can write text. You can use the writing tools. That's helpful for sure. You've got to ask yourself how many people are going to actually use this in day-to-day usage. People that are going to buy the Pro Max and they're going to be, sweating out pictures in 48 megapixels and using the audio mix and the 4K 120 and every other thing that you could possibly do. These people probably are going to use it, but for the average person, they've got to be educated on how to use these things, where they can find them, what uses they're in. And for some people, they just don't care ultimately about Apple Intelligence. I'm interested in it because I'm like, this is new, this is interesting. But some people, and probably a number of people, just don't care. They just want a new phone that works, takes pictures and send messages. That's it. AI, don't really care. Even though it's been in the phone probably for a lot longer than they think, they're not really bothered that much. Having said that, one thing that I think a lot of people will use, and probably the most important thing in Apple Intelligence, is the cleanup tool. in photos. Basically, you can remove things from your photos, and it does a very good job. When I was in Spain, I took this picture and I posted it on my Instagram story. Loads of people liked it, and nobody batted an eyelid, but what I didn't tell you is that the original picture had something in the bottom right, and I used a cleanup tool, got rid of it, bang. You can't even tell that it was there in the first place. If you take a great picture of you and your dog, or you and your family, you have something in the corner that is sort of distracting attention away, you literally hit clean up and drag on the screen to see what you want to get rid of, and then boom, it's gone. And the picture is more clean, more simple to look at, and it does help the picture. Obviously, this will cause a debate because some people are going to be like, oh, I don't know if you should be using this with your pictures. It's not a real picture if you're taking stuff out. For me, if it's personal use, there's no problem with it. Like no one really cares. If I've taken a picture of my dog and there's an orange thing in the background and I want to get rid of it, I want to get rid of it. It just makes it look better. No one cares. Like that picture I put on my Instagram, no one cares that I got rid of that thing. They didn't even notice. But obviously, if you're doing editorial work, this is like a no-go. And how could I forget about Image Playground? This thing literally came out today. Just had to play around with it probably 1 minute before I started this video. Typed in a few different things, wanted to put my yellow Labrador and see him driving a tractor. This is what it gave. First one was a bit sketchy, but then it found out what I wanted, and you can swipe through it, gives you multiple options. And also you can do this with Genmoji and make your own emoji, if that's something you wanted to do. Can't say I've ever wanted to design my own emoji, but at least you have that option now. Okay, this is me jumping in mid-edit. I forgot to add, if you press and hold the camera button, it'll open up this visual intelligence app, and it's quite an important thing actually with Apple Intelligence. So you press and hold it. Say, for example, you can go out and you can point at a restaurant and it will populate the menu or the website or anything like that. I tried it on one of our dogs to see if it could identify what breed of dog it was, where it was, and it did. It knew it was a Labrador, it knew he was chilling on the carpet. And then I grabbed one of the dog's toys, a toy squirrel, sat him in front of the camera, and it did know that it was a fake squirrel. So Apple Intelligence is pretty smart, but that is via ChatGPT. This was something that I completely forgot, so back to the video. The main reason why I bought this phone, besides the camera control button and the display, is the battery life. For me and a lot of people, the most important thing when buying a new phone is knowing that the battery is going to be better and it's going to last you a few years. When I bought my 14 Pro, that lasted me 2 and a bit years before I got this phone. I was on 86–85% battery health and it was struggling. And I had that optimized battery charging on. I tried to keep it between 20 and 80 the whole time, and sometimes it just didn't work. And it just wasn't very good. And at the end of its life, it was struggling. I was getting like 3 hours, 4 hours of screen on time. With this 16 Pro Max, I believe all the hype now, because having used it for a while, this is the bee's knees when it comes to battery life. It's absolutely incredible. We now have a 4,685 milliamp hour battery in the 16 Pro Max. That's up from 4,323 on 14 Pro Max. So very small upgrades every year. We're getting towards 5,000 milliamp hours in a phone, which is really good. This thing could last you 2 days if you didn't use it that much, probably even more than 2 days. You probably get 3 days out of this. It has been superb. Obviously, battery usage is depending on what you're doing. If you're gaming all day and playing videos and playing music and using your camera, you're going to eat through the battery a little bit quicker. If you're using it for like text and calls and emails, then you're not going to use that much battery. To put this in context, when I left Spain a couple of weeks ago, I took my phone off the charger at 9:30 UK time. When I got to the airport, I used my phone. I was watching videos. I watched a couple of Netflix episodes. I used my hotspot on my phone for my Mac. When I went to bed, I had 33% of battery remaining, and I took it off the charger, it was on 98. So I used just over 60%, and that was a full day of traveling, pretty much running it to its max limit. That would never have been possible on my 14 Pro. I'd have to charge it like 3 times to do that. However, as I said, I've only charged it to 100% probably 2 or 3 times, and that's because I've set a charge limit on this phone. I know this is something you could do on the 15 Pro series last year. We didn't have this on the 14 Pro, and with the battery redesign, this is probably the best upgrade about this phone. I'm hopeful that setting a charge limit I have at 85% is going to extend the battery life of this phone for a little while longer. I want to be able to use this phone for like 4 years straight and not be worrying about the battery capacity in 2 years time, in 3 years time. And with setting a charge limit in the battery, this is going to make things last a lot longer. I'm very, very hopeful about this. I just wish they brought this to the Apple Silicon Max. I could do with this on my MacBook. That would be great. So if you do buy this iPhone, you can have the peace of mind knowing that this is going to last you at least 2, 3, 4 years, probably you can push it even more. And other notable mentions is that the USB-C port on this phone is USB 3, 10 gigabits per second, and it does support DisplayPort. Alongside the A18 chip performance, which has been superb for me, the phone also has 8 gigabytes of RAM. This is crazy because that's the same amount of RAM as you would get in a base MacBook Pro from last year. You now have that in your pocket walking around in your phone. And so my verdict on this, would I buy the 16 Pro Max? And the answer is yes, but only if I'm using anything below a 14. If you're using a 15, even a 14 Pro, there's not really that many differences to this year's phone besides the battery tech. I bought it because the battery was just gone and they wouldn't even replace my battery. But if you're on a 15 or a 15 Pro, I wouldn't recommend buying this phone because there's negligible difference. But very few people buy phones every year. And if you do, probably going to buy it anyway without watching this video. So if you're below a standard 14, I would definitely recommend upgrading to this phone. You will see a massive difference. I've got family members who've gone from the 12 to the 16 Pro and they love it. It's been like a huge upgrade for them. The display, the cameras, the battery. If you're on a 14 Pro and above, it's up to you, it's your money, but I probably wouldn't recommend it. I would hold on to your phone. I know there's hypocrisy in that because I was on a 14 Pro and now I've upgraded, but I'm not going to buy a phone for a couple of years, and this seemed like a great video to make. This has been my review of the 16 Pro Max. If you enjoyed, leave a like, leave a comment, let me know if I've got anything wrong, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.
They're never gonna keep me